The ratio of messiness to plot in this book was not for me. If you guessed Heath, then that's 15 points for you. So you can now see why I have beef with this book too. She never took off the ring. Last year, I read a total of 31 books, and of those 31 books, 6 of them were in my absolute most bottom tier when I ranked them. And for me, I don't use the star system because I feel like a book is either up here, fine, or like really bad. So for me, bottom tier is like 0 to 1.5 stars if you use kind of the star metric. That I'd say that's about my reference point for it. But I don't regularly rank using that system. Anyway, I could very easily rant about all 6 of these books, but I don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. So I've decided to narrow it down to just 2 that really irked me and just made me want to ask for a refund, not of the book. I actually got both of these from the library, but I want the time that it took me to read them. I want a refund of that. I want those hours added back onto my lifespan because I was robbed. Actually, ironically, I don't really want this to turn into a full ranty video, which is why I actually spent a decent amount of time last night. I was up till like 1:30 in the morning, sitting down, which is why I have my laptop, and writing out a pretty detailed script for this video because I want to be very articulate in my explanation as to why I dislike these books. So number 1, I'm being fair, and number 2, I am leaving anyone who watches this with a well-informed viewpoint. So during this, I'm going to specifically hone in on the 2 things that, in my opinion, really make or break a book that I feel like I can discuss intelligently, and those are your characters and the plot. I feel like if either of those 2 things are off, then your book is already starting in a really difficult position. We're going to be very clear right now. The plot summaries that I'm going to give for these books are going to be very detailed and filled to the brim with spoilers. So if you love these books, wouldn't recommend continuing on at this point, and B, if you want to read these books and don't want the entire plot to be spoiled, then I would also maybe not watch, because I can't give my critiques about the book without spoiling the plot. I just can't. So I figured I'd just give you the plot up front so that way my discussion points make sense. So with all of those rules and regulations and contracts and statements out of the way, the first book in the hot seat is actually one that was very well received. I feel like it was kind of a social media darling for a minute when it came out, which is why I put it on reserve, because I want to know what the hype was about. That book is The Favorites by Lane Fargo. It is a contemporary fiction, and it's also categorized as romance. More on that later. So we're going to get into my plot summary. I was very detailed when I do this, and I also have to just kind of thank the internet, because I'm not going to lie, I kind of forgot what happened in some of these books. But yes, summary time. So the way I describe The Favorites is where Gossip Girl meets figure skating in a dramatic fashion. Kat and Heath have regarded themselves as soulmates throughout their childhood. Heath was originally in foster care, but found comfort and love with Kat, even going as far as to learn how to ice dance so that she could have a partner to pursue her Olympic dreams. Eventually, Heath's situation in foster care falls apart, and Kat begs her father to foster him so he can stay with her and continue to practice, which her father agrees with. Sometime later, her father dies, and control of both the estate and Kat's guardianship falls to her older brother, who is an angry, abusive drunk that also hates Heath and throws him out. I believe around that time Heath was 18, so there really was no going back into the system for him. It was just done and over with. So him throwing Heath out only causes the two's relationship to grow as Kat will bring Heath food, water, blankets, etc., as he's sleeping in an old barn on their property to make it through the winter. And I believe that they were living in Chicago. So if you know anything about Chicago, and they were on the lake. So if you know anything about living in Chicago on the lake in the winter, you know that it is cold. Lake effect snow. Oh my God. The lake effect wind chill. Oh my God. That goes all the way out to the suburbs, and they were living right on the lake. So it was cold. It was snowy. Not not good. As they continue to train, Kat and Heath are viewed as two promising figure skaters who are known more for their performance quality and chemistry than beautiful technique. After stealing Kat's older brother's car and driving away in the middle of the night to go to a skating competition, the pair are recognized by ice skating legend Sheila Lynn. Sheila, who is captivated by Kat's raw desire to win, invites them to join her and her children, who are twins, Bella and Garrett, at a summer intensive at her state-of-the-art training facility in LA. Kat, of course, jumps at the opportunity, while Heath likes how things are with just the two of them and is much more against the idea. But since he says he loves her and will do anything for her, he agrees to go. And while Kat has a smooth transition into the rigid and hyper-competitive environment, he struggles with it, but the summer goes well, and they are invited to stay on full-time. Despite the cost, they agree to stay and make it work. So essentially, Kat's family had some money in the beginning of the book, but I believe after her father passed away, with the control of the house going to her brother to an estate, she couldn't access anything that her father left behind for her until she turned 18. And double spoiler alert, when she turns 18, turns out her awful brother drained her accounts. So they're essentially broke. Because of their financial situation, they actually end up moving in with the Lynns. And that is when Bella and Kat's friendship really begins to take off. They both recognize and respect each other's fundamental desire to win over everything. One night, when the girls are talking after an international event in Japan, Heath overhears Bella telling Kat that Heath is holding her back from her goals and that she'll be better off skating with someone like Garrett. For reference, the partners, because in pair skating, it's obviously a man and a woman, they partner. So the partners are Bella and Garrett, so the twins are partners together, and Kat and Heath are partners together. And when Bella says this, she is still like skating with her brother. And at that moment, I don't really believe it was her intention to kind of get rid of Garrett, but that kind of is what ends up happening. Anyway, this conversation between the two triggers a major point of the story. Two major points of the story. Number one, Heath runs off, completely disappears for the better part of like 2, 3, 4 years. And we eventually, down the line, find out that he spent this time training in Russia to become the figure skater that Kat needed to win. And at the same time, Kat does end up pairing up with Garrett. I don't remember who partners with Bella, I'm not going to lie to you. And the two become the powerhouse that she always dreamed of. They sweep gold medals at every competition they attend until one day Heath comes back. And he's a completely different skater, which then leads to him being paired up with Bella. And that pairing becomes Kat and Garrett's greatest competition. So the pairings, essentially the boys, swap. Moving into our next part. Heath, at this moment, is only using Bella to make Kat jealous. And despite being Kat's best friend, Bella is still just as competitive as ever. During warm-ups at a major event, Bella trips Kat on the ice, and Kat slams her head onto the ice. She has a very obvious concussion. I have seen some people get absolutely rocked. No, you don't understand. Absolutely rocked. And I'm saying this and you still don't understand. I've quite literally seen people get their lights shut out completely. Concussion. So when they said she got such an obvious concussion, I know what that looks like, but she skates anyway. And I also know people who have gotten those concussions and competed anyway. But during that particular run through on the ice, Garrett drops Kat, and I don't remember, she breaks her skull or her ribs, I don't know, something, and there's blood everywhere. She essentially looks dead on the ice, and then here comes Heath after his 3 years of abandonment, and he picks her up off the ice and brings her to the hospital, missing his own opportunity, him and Bella's opportunity to skate. And then he keeps everyone away from her while she's in the hospital, everyone away from Kat. So she thinks that no one cares about her, no one came to visit her. So the two actually end up going back to her house, her now abandoned house, Kat's house in Chicago. Literally, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. I still have a lot more plot to summarize for you. So after they disappear, sometime later, with the two isolated at Kat's house, Bella and Garrett show back up and they convince them to start training together again. So now we're back to Kat skating with Heath because the picture of him carrying her off the ice went like mega viral in ice dance, ice skating world. And so people are like dying to see them skate together again. So they do. They end up going back out to LA to start training again. And with even more chemistry infused into their performances than before, they are dominating and they are the favorites. Ding, CinemaSins, the title, ding, roll credits. Anyway, they're the favorites to win it all. During all of this, so they're doing all their skating competitions, they're winning. I believe it was at like a pretty big event they're at. They finished their routine, it's perfect, they know they won. Heath proposes to Kat on the ice. Let me say that again. Heath proposes to Kat on the ice. I'll touch on this again when we get to characters, but I just need you to like internalize that. So then again, we're at another event, and Bella tells Kat about the truth of what happened when Heath disappeared. So throughout all of this, from the time he disappeared until this incident, no one knows where he was. Kat doesn't know where he was. Bella didn't know where he was. Garrett didn't know where he was. No one knew where he was. So she tells her this, and it rattles her, and she has an awful performance. They lose. And so after that performance, she has confrontation with Bella. I don't remember if Bella and Garrett win. I think they probably did. Anyway, after that, she has confrontation with Bella. They storm off, separate. She's talking to some other friend who convinced her to like, no, he's fine. You should go talk to him. Blah, 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 blah. And then she goes back to their room and finds Heath and Bella in bed together. And then rightfully so, she storms off and disappears. So this time, Kat disappears. And again, years go by. You can tell I'm getting more annoyed because my summaries are getting shorter. Anyway, years pass. There's no contact from Bella, no contact from Garrett, no contact from Heath. None of these three like central people in her life, because she really doesn't have any family, contact her at all. At all. Keep in mind, at this point, she did accept the proposal, by the way. Heath is her fiance. She never took off the ring. None of that. Cool. So then the thing that ends up pulling her back to California after all those years is Sheila Lynn's death. She goes to the funeral, says her bit, and goes home. Doesn't talk to anyone. So then months pass, and it's just Bella who shows up this time to bring her back to skate again. I don't remember exactly why, but Bella shows up and she's like, you should come and skate again. I'll coach you. So she does. So there's no apology about what happened from Bella, but she agrees to go back. And when she sees Heath again, who was her fiance when this happened, doesn't apologize, doesn't really say anything. They just train to compete again. Bella's their coach. Garrett at this point has decided to protect his peace and dipped a while ago. Eventually, Kat ends up moving back in with Bella in the same house that they were in when they all first went out to LA together. And she finds out Heath has been living there the entire time, but they're just friends. They're just friends. They're just friends. So again, we go to a competition and something awful happens. Bella falls out, like passes out before they compete, and they forfeit the competition because as she's passing out, Bella's like, oh my god, Heath, I need Heath, I need Heath. And Kat's like, decide to, I don't know, fundamentally change his personal. So then she's like, no, Heath, go with her. We can miss this. It's not that important to me. And I get you're probably wondering why I'm mocking her for telling him to go to the hospital, and I'll get to that. Anyway, they forfeit. They learn at the hospital that the reason that Bella fell out is because she's pregnant, and guess who the father is? If you guessed Heath, then that's 15 points for you. So, the pair continue to skate together, Kat and Heath. Bella's still their coach. They make a run, they go all the way to the Sochi Olympics, where they are being sabotaged left and right. But, they pull through, they win Olympic gold, and then they get stripped of their Olympic gold because of said sabotage. So then the book ends with Bella, Cat, and Heath living as a throuple um, in the Chicago suburbs, raising Heath and Bella's daughter, and that's it. I think Cat and Heath are like technically together, but Cat's like, I'm just happy to be surrounded by the people that I love most, and that's literally the end of the book. Okay, let's talk about my issues that I had, starting with characters. So I feel like the biggest beef I had was with Kat and her characterization, her character development, and just the fact that it didn't develop so much as that it took sharp dives, like off cliffs. Like there wasn't a gradual change to something. It was just like all of a sudden her mind completely shifted. Anyway, let me my main problem with Kat as character is that her main trait from the beginning of the book through a decent portion of it is that her main drive is her competitiveness. I am personally in the camp of people who read this book, and I have to believe that these two camps exist. I'm in the camp of people that believe she never loved Heath, like, at all. And when you think about it, like, look at her reaction to things like the marriage proposal, right? When he proposed to her on the ice, I'm pretty sure what in her head, like her thoughts on the book, she was mad because it was taking away from her accomplishment as a skater. And even more so, I discussed throughout the book how she really hadn't put like a lot of thought into getting married, really didn't have like a particularly strong desire to either. And he pops out this ring and she's like, put that away. She doesn't actually say that, she accepts, but she's just like, I didn't ask for this. Why are you doing this now? This is about my skating, not about us. What are you doing? So the marriage proposal. Or her reaction to finding out that he was with Bella. You can be the most nonchalant person, like ever, but if anyone finds out that the person that they love is hooking up with their best friend, they're going to fly slightly off the handle in their own way, but slightly off the handle. And she's just kind of like, oh, okay. No, no, that's not okay. Her true love was ice skating. Yeah, she didn't love Heath. You can literally tell because she discards him so fast when it becomes an option for her to skate with Garrett, who is obviously Sheila's son and extremely well trained. She's like, "Oh yeah, this will work better." Bye, Heath. Still love you, bud, but like, get out. Bye. So I feel like some of the instances where I see this trait where the competitiveness and that IQ for sports and figure skating that she has just flies out the window is like when Bella uses the truth about Heath's disappearance to distract her before a major event. And then it does. It throws off her entire routine and she just can't do anything. Or when Bella passed out and Kat is insisting that Heath goes to the hospital with her and that, he won't be able to skate with her and they'll be forfeiting their spot in this important event. And she's like, yeah, no, go. It's fine. Like, that's more important. That would literally, nothing has ever been more important to her than ice skating. She, IRL would have been like, all right, bro, you can join her when this is over, but you're skating. So, I don't know what you gotta do, but lace them up. You're going on. Or, and this one was the biggest thing, because as I was reading it, I was sitting there like, don't do that, watch out for that. You know that's probably bad, right? Is when they were in Sochi and they were getting sabotaged left and right. Like, I think her costume got caught up. They got put into this really uncomfortable hotel room. I was honestly waiting for like the blades and the skates, but what ended up happening was she was in pain or something. I don't know. And she took something from someone and it ended up being like an illegal, a banned substance. And so when they took their drug test after winning, they got caught. She's like, I didn't take anything. Yeah. And I was sitting there and I was like, why are you taking any medicine, anything at all from anyone? Like, period. And as I was reading this, I was like, how are you supposedly so competitive and so smart, and you're not anticipating and we're not prepared for any of this sabotage going in, even though it was talked about in the book about how this was going to be like not a fun experience for the American figure skaters going over to Sochi. And she just let things happen to her. Just nothing. And I feel like this irked me even more because I was not a figure skater by any means. No. But I did do a performance based competitive sport. And I really need you to understand like the level of things someone would have had to tell me before a performance to truly throw off my game. I mean, you can ask a lot of people for performance-based sports, and when I say performance-based sports, I'm talking about things like, gymnastics, figure skating, competitive cheerleading, rhythmic gymnastics, synchronized swimming, things that are objectively scored. Eventually, you train so much that you can literally just go out and just do it. And I know this because I was talking with someone I work with who also did the same sport I did. And we were like, if you didn't compete like on the brink of death one time, did you even do the sport? And we were like, no. And that's my exact like point with this. You can literally compete on the brink of death and still do completely fine. Completely fine. It takes a lot to throw a high level athlete in one of these sports off. Like a lot. That's my rant about that. Let's move on to Heath. Yeah, his character was two bad things. One, a wasted opportunity, and two, the worst. He was the worst. So, like, wasted opportunity, he had two pivotal parts of his story that were completely glossed over, and that was his foster home experience and his experience in Russia. Like, these are two pretty important parts of his character that we get absolutely no further information about. Nothing. And I feel like it would have maybe made Kat and Heath's relationship make a little bit more sense, like why he is perhaps not in love with her, but he's definitely like blindly loyal to her. I think if we had had any information on those two experiences, it would have made his character a lot more whole. It would have made the plot a lot more full, if that makes sense. How is he the worst? Thank you so much for asking. His main characteristic, to me, he really gets two. It's brooding and loving Kat to an almost toxic level. But at the same time, he doesn't love her to like the level that is this like blind devotion that is thrown on him in the books, because if he did love her, then he would have like listened to her on so many instances, and that doesn't really relate to ice skating, but just like conversations they had where she would say one thing and then he'd do the complete opposite, then she'd say something else and he'd do the complete opposite. Or forget conversations, if he truly loved her, he never would have like gotten into a relationship with Bella. So like they're trying to say, oh yeah, he's blindly devoted to her, hopelessly devoted, but at the same time, he is just kind of the worst and really doesn't care about any of her feelings because he never actually listens to any of her feelings. And he also got into bed with her best friend, but like he really loves her. My best guess is that he was truly trauma bonded to her. But because that trauma is never fleshed out, we don't know why. So yeah, that was just such a wasted opportunity on his character, I feel like. Let's move on to Bella. Oh, I'm not gonna call her negative character traits bad, like bad writing, because every book needs an antagonist, but that's the missed opportunity in this book because Bella is the antagonist, but she isn't allowed to be. She's characterized to be Kat's best friend, but is worse to her than Heath is. Think about all the different times in that plot summary where I mentioned that she sabotaged her. She tripped her on ice. She told her about Heath's disappearance. She got into bed with Heath. Like, and then later in the book, I feel like they kind of let her be viewed as Heath's guardian angel, but she's, in my opinion, really just using him like she uses everyone else. Everyone else. Her brother. She even like gets into tips with her mom, but she just Bella's the worst, really and truly. Maybe I think it would have been such a fun twist if behind the scenes, all of these things that kept happening to Kat and Heath and even Garrett at competitions were orchestrated by Bella. Because after she realized that she would never be an Olympic gold medalist, she didn't want anyone close around her to be one either. I don't know, that could have been like a super fun twist at the end, I feel like. And it would have made a lot more sense as to why she was acting like super friendly towards Kat and then immediately doing something that proves the opposite. I definitely think it was interesting to have within a group of people whose entire life revolved around figure skating. He did it because he had to. He was Sheila's son. He was. Let me touch on my plot and then we'll move on to my next book. So first of all, the plot did this thing where I call it up-down cycling. So we're building, 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 and it all falls apart. We're building, 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 and it all falls apart. We're building, building, building. This literally happened like 4 or 5 times during the book. It got so old so fast because after the second or third time, you know what's going to happen. We're going to get to this big event. Something terrible is going to happen and it's all going to go downhill. And then we're going to work our way back up. And then we're going to get to this big event and something terrible is going to happen. And it's all going to go downhill. Like the opening line of the book is, today is the 10th anniversary of the worst day of my life. But because of that plot, like format, I don't remember which day is supposed to be the worst day of her life. Is it like when she found out her fiance was cheating on her, when she almost died, when she lost her gold medal, when she found out her best friend was pregnant with her fiance's kid? Like, which one was it? Because I don't remember. And then also there were a lot of open-ended plot holes. I already mentioned Heath's background and disappearance in Russia. I won't say it was maybe like a plot hole, maybe like a plot point that was just open-ended. It was just like, yeah, it was really bad. And that's why it's like this, because it was really bad. Okay, what was really bad? I get that he doesn't talk a lot, but he did talk to Kat. So, what about it was really bad? Please tell me. I want to know. And then also, and this is just like me picking like one specific moment out of a couple, but early in the book, at that very first competition they go to, and this is kind of what catches Sheila's attention, is Kat actually gets hurt at that event that they steal her brother's car to drive to and compete in. She gets hurt. And she can like barely use her hip, but she skates on it anyway, delivers a great performance. Again, what happened to that girl at the end of this book? I don't know. But that's essentially what catches Sheila's attention because she's like, oh, that girl wants to win. But the thing is, they ended up going to the hospital for it. And it was like a pretty bad, gruesome hip injury that she's dealing with. And the book doesn't time jump from there. And she's just like miraculously fine 3 days later. Went from not being able to walk, not being able to move, to completely fine, skating, no pain whatsoever, nothing. And this is also like super picky, but figure skating is notorious for having just a lot of chronic injuries. I mean, just the jumping in general puts so much pressure on like your ankles, knees, lower back. That's a lot of chronic pain, a lot of chronic injuries within that sport. And somehow everyone in this book is just miraculously completely healthy. Completely healthy? Are you kidding? No, I don't buy that for a second. And that's not just with this specific sport. That's with any sport. Eventually, you please go and interview Team USA, Winter and Summer Olympics, and please find me someone who can say my entire body, top to bottom, zero injuries anywhere. Because that's false. I got to a pretty high level in my sport. This shoulder, not faring too well. But like, that's what happens when you use your body like this. Like, things strain, things hurt, you put a lot of pressure on your joints, but everyone's completely healthy. I'm not buying it. I don't know if for me this book was a case of missed expectations, but like it was just not a book for me. I was going to go back to the romance categorization. I would not categorize this book as romance at all because it's just no. So if you're looking for romance, and if you think the romance is between Kat and Heath and like this undying devotion to him, do not read that for this. You will be mad. This is not a romance. You have been warned. The next book review should not take as long because one, it's shorter, and two, the plot is just simply not as complicated. So my second worst book of 2025 is Love Letters to a Serial Killer by Tasha Corell. This is a mystery slash thriller. Here we go with another one of my thoughts and summaries. The story opens with us being introduced to Hannah, a nondescript. I'm saying nondescript because I don't remember any of her physical attributes. I don't remember any of the physical attributes of any of the people in this book. But yeah, the story opens with us being introduced to Hannah, a nondescript woman in her late 20s or early 30s, living a very mundane life that is slowly deteriorating around her. Actually, now that I think about it, the story kind of like cold opens with Hannah being tied up to a chair with the accused serial killer who remains anonymous. And they're just like having this conversation. She's tied to this chair and he's like, I'm gonna kill you. And honestly, that was kind of my first clue that the person who is accused of the crimes is not the person who actually committed them. So in her life, before all of the events of the book happens, that like moment of her being tied up is like in the future. Anyway, back to her life before that. She's currently in a relationship with a man named Max that is slowly starting to end because, and he doesn't cheat on her. He just ends up finding someone who has more in common with. Anyway, yeah, that relationship is slowly starting to end. And then she's currently employed at a nonprofit that doesn't really require a lot of mental effort for her to be good at her job. She spends her days talking with her coworkers, scrolling through social media. And then at the same time, her friendship with her best friend, who is a woman named Megan, is slowly ending as Megan is moving into a new chapter of her life. And they just kind of don't view the world the same way anymore, I guess is the best way I can put it. Like she tells Megan stays in the book for a little bit longer than this, but this is really the only time I'm going to mention her. But as she kind of dives into a lot of the true crime and following the serial killer and stuff, Megan is like, I don't know if that's like the best way to spend your time. I mean, if it keeps you happy, like go for it. But I think we could be doing something different, so they just kind of end up drifting apart. So all of that, as in that like mundane, very boring life, all of that changes when a beautiful, young, and successful woman named Anna Lee disappears. Suddenly, Hannah finds herself obsessed with the case and begins to follow along on a true crime forum that she finds and eventually gets completely immersed in. In this forum, the users dissect the known facts of Anna Lee's case, even digging up new evidence themselves to come up with a list of plausible suspects. During these moments, Hannah notes the irony of what she is doing, using this tragic event to fuel her own life and happiness, but she continues to do it anyway. And moments like that happen all throughout the book, where she's like, wow, this is really, really awful, and I should not be doing this. Anyway, back to what I was doing. It happens a lot. So sometime later, after Annalee's death, a second and third body are found in the same ravine that Anna's body was found in. So, of course, this lights up the true crime forum, and Hannah eventually becomes completely engrossed in finding out what happened to these three women. So Hannah begins to investigate the victims' lives on social media to find a connection and makes posts on social media just to try to find out anything that is happening. And slowly this begins to seep into her life, negatively impacting both her relationships, her work, like it just impacts everything. But Hannah doesn't let up. Her life finally feels like it has a purpose after so long. So finally, a man named William Thompson is arrested after a fourth woman is killed. So we have 4 women have been killed at this point. But with his arrest, and actually throughout, like earlier in the book, Hannah is actually kind of onto him. She makes a connection that he knew all 4 of these women at some point, was involved with them. So she's just kind of like, maybe this guy is it. She thinks about it. And when he actually gets arrested, she's like, oh, well, that's like, it wasn't this big moment that she thought it would be. It just kind of happens and then everyone moves on and she's just not super satisfied with it. But she continues to follow the case despite the increasingly noticeable toll it's taking on her life. Notably the fact that she spent so much time working on social media, on that forum and social media, that actually caused her to miss an important deadline for planning an event, and that actually leads to her getting fired. And at this moment, Hannah writes her first letter to William, who's currently in jail awaiting trial. And in her first letter, she kind of just rants about how she hopes that he knows what he did is horrible and that he's a terrible person. And she just rants and rants and rants, sends it, expects nothing in return. Of course, I mean, the title of the book is literally Love Letters to a Serial Killer, so he does respond. And that's how that relationship starts, and they just keep writing each other back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it is through these letters that she falls in love with him and decides that since she can't afford her rent anymore, she doesn't have a job, she doesn't really have any friends, to pack up everything she owns, put most of it in a storage unit, and drive from Minneapolis to Georgia to watch the trial in person and support her boyfriend. hmm So at the trial, she meets two other women who were on this forum that she was on, who were obsessed with the case. One is named Lauren, who's a college-aged girl, and the other one is a older married woman named Dottie, who's kind of going through a rough spot in her marriage. So during the day, she sits in on the trial, but at night, she continues to do her own investigating to figure out if her pen pal boyfriend is actually a murderer. But during the course of the trial, another body is discovered in the same spot where the other four was. And because they thought they had the killer sitting in jail, basically he gets acquitted. And it's not just because of the location, but also the fifth body that was found had the same details about it as the first four did, details that hadn't been released to the public, meaning that only the person who had killed the other four people would know that this is how it happened. So they release him because there's now evidence that he didn't do it. Once William is acquitted, he actually shows up at Hannah's hotel room door as she is packing up to go home and proposes to her. Yep. And she accepts and immediately moves in with him. But she still continues to investigate whether or not he is guilty or not. And eventually her investigating does lead her to a real killer, William's brother, Bentley, who ends up kidnapping her. So he is mysterious serial killer man from the opening of the book. Of course, during this kidnapping, he confesses his entire plan and crimes in great detail, and William ends up coming to save her. I don't believe he kills him. I think he just like threatened him Chuck Bass style, and he leaves. But he ends up breaking off the relationship and wondering how he could continue to trust her when she investigated him of crimes that he told her that he did not commit while being in a relationship with him. So the book ends with Hannah moving back home, moving in with her parents, working as a barista, and being pregnant. The end. So you can now see why I have beef with this book too. Same drill. I'm going to talk about the characters first, which is not going to take like super long, but then I'm also going to talk about the plot. So I actually made a point to talk about the characters overall in this book. Most of the characters in this book were not well developed in my eyes. They served a single purpose throughout the storyline, and then they just kind of disappear once their part of it is done. And a lot of it was done to make Hannah appear to be more sympathetic, but in my opinion, it kind of just made her look like a little bit pathetic. So, like, Megan was put into the plot to be her friend and just kind of make comments about how she was choosing to live her life, and then kind of move on and fade away out of her life. Max was put into the story just to break up with her and then fade away out of her life. And Cindy Thompson, who is Will's mom, was put in the book just to be the overly suspicious and hateful future mother-in-law. And that's kind of all she does. And then both Dottie and Lauren kind of play a similar role to Megan, where they are there to be her friends. And then they're kind of like, but my life is bigger than this true crime forum. And then they fade out. Like that's what all of those characters do. It's like, I'm here to deliver a message. Okay, goodbye. So the main character, Hannah, is supposed to be an unreliable narrator. I get that. I acknowledge that. She openly acknowledges bad things that she does, but continues to do them. My problem is that I feel like it wasn't written in a way to make it like a sudden reveal or to make it smart. Like in The Secret History, William Penn is an extremely unreliable narrator. He sees all of this wealth and stuff that all of his other classmates are involved in, and then while he is critiquing it like with someone else, he then goes out and tries his best to blend in with them. He's just like not a reliable narrator, and it's well done in that book. And this book, it's just kind of like this very annoying inner monologue of thoughts, followed by her continuing to do whatever she was doing in the first place. Again, not written in a way to make it like a sudden reveal to you as the reader that she knows what she's doing but doesn't care. It's just she knows what she's doing, is characterized to care about it, but continues to do those damaging things. She's like, wow, I really should not be involved in this true crime forum because it's really exploitative towards the women and these victims. And we're talking more about the killer than the people who were killed by him. And what about all the women of color who just don't get any more playtime? Oh, I know. I'll make one social media post about this woman of color and then I'll go back to doing what I was doing. That's how Hannah is. And then I just feel like you can write a train wreck. You can write a very convincing train wreck. Actually, I love reading a very convincing train wreck. Best train wreck I ever read was actually in The Heart Principle. She was going through some stuff. Her life was kind of a train wreck, and it really made me pull out my hair. Hannah was a very poorly written train wreck. Okay, she had, very real things happening to her, losing friends, her relationship failing, her job just being dead end and boring. It was just so poorly developed. And then during the last part of the book where she and William are living together and engaged, but she continues to investigate him, I could not keep up with the back and forth she was doing with, oh my gosh, he might have murdered them. But oh my gosh, I love him and I want everyone to know that I'm with this accused serial killer because he's just so cool because he's an accused serial killer. But oh my gosh, what if he murdered these women? He's just so cool because he's an accused serial killer. And I think everyone should know that I'm with an accused serial killer. Oh my gosh, I found evidence that he could have done it. Do you see what I mean? It literally got exhausting at some point. Like, it was really annoying. Moving on to William and Bentley, because they can be rolled into one because they were not interesting. They were just so bland and extremely predictable, both of their plot lines, like good brother, bad brother. Oh yeah, he's been crazy since we were kids and always blamed everything on me. And then the one who's the bad one being, like manipulative and a smooth talker and making it seem like he did it. It was like, yeah, no, like duh, obviously it was Bentley. The two brothers have an antagonistic relationship with each other, but what we hear about as the reader is just kind of one brother's word against the other, and it never delivers like this creepy tension that I feel like it could, especially considering this is supposed to be like in the thriller genre. They're just kind of boring. It's just a lot of talking and not a lot of action, you know? So let's talk about the plot because I kind of have a lot more to say about the plot in this one. Oh my gosh, there were so many pacing issues. The actual interaction with William through the final sentence of the book where we find out she's moved back home and all of that, it's like 1/3 of the entire page count. If that, it might be a fourth. I feel like that's such a significant part of the plot, her actually being there with him in person, and it's literally this much of the book. Like when I read the back cover, that's the part that I thought was going to be the most interesting. This much of the book. There are multiple chapters of this book where it is completely focused on her being on the internet in this true crime forum and nothing else is happening. And I mean nothing. Maybe one or two characters will pipe in and be like, hey, that forum's like really bad. She'll be like, yeah, I don't care. And then we will continue on in the forum. Like, I understand that as a reader, we're supposed to understand that she's kind of like descending into this forum, but it goes on for far too long, in my opinion. In my opinion. And what could have made it a little bit better, a little bit more broken up, is if we kind of saw those repercussions coming slowly and like building up towards the bigger ones that kind of end up exploding. But it was so much time spent on that true crime forum. Then after all that happens, we get to the trial part of the book, which is equally as slow. and boring. And her investigation into the case as the trial is going on doesn't, I mean, it reveals that William's family is a bunch of rich white people who live in Georgia and are obsessed with family legacy, and the father's probably cheating on his wife. That's what her investigation like yields. And like nothing else. So then you drag through that part of the book. Then we finally get her in-person interactions with William for like the last 100 or so, 125, 150 pages. But they're all so dry and bland. I blame William for this a lot. He's just boring. And then like the evidence that she does find just really falls into her lap. It's like, oh my gosh, he kept evidence, he kept trophies from each of the women that he might have killed in the top drawer of his desk, right on the corner. Like you would think as a lawyer, and he had these things. I believe he explained it away as he knew his brother did it, and so he had these things to like keep his brother out, whatever. You would think a man who is a lawyer, even though you don't have to be a lawyer to know this, would have put those things into the first big fiery thing he could find, like an incinerator, or put them out in the middle of some property in Georgia. He wouldn't have kept them in his top desk drawer. So, like, even the clues she's investigating and finding are just planted so ready and available for her. It's like an escape room. You're supposed to find them. Yeah, nothing. And then the entire plot of her being kidnapped lasts for like 2 seconds. Um, yeah, and it just kind of de-escalates through a good, solid conversation. And in the end, no criminal sees any repercussions for any of their actions at all. I'm pretty sure Bentley just has to like move out of Georgia. And that's it. My second main issue with this plot was the predictable ending. I called the ending on page 245 and not just like called the vague, I called it to a T. I called exactly what would happen at the end. So the surprise ending is supposed to be, of course, that Bentley is very driven by jealousy just for how William has lived his life. So he killed all those women and framed it on him so he could like not have this perfect life because Bentley's like the crazy brother. I don't remember why he killed the fifth woman while Will was already in jail, but all of it just hinges on their messy relationship with each other. I feel like the actual twist in this book could have been interesting if Hannah and Will killed Bentley, or if somehow the brothers framed the murders on Hannah in the name of like preserving their family legacy and like really getting off this scot-free. That would have been fun. And then my third issue with the plot is something that also goes back to characterization, and that is the fact that after Annalee's death, Hannah is like obsessed with this woman. She gets her hair cut the same as her, she got clothes dyed the same as hers, like all of these different things. And we never get any explanation as to why she is so obsessed with this woman. And it could have been there's so many plausible explanations. It's just none of them were worked out. She could have been jealous that she had like this successful and interesting career as a lawyer. She could have thought that maybe this was the type of woman that William was interested in seeing. So when she went down to go see him in person at the trial, she like transformed herself into Annalee. But we never get any explanation at all as to why she's obsessed with this woman. And again, it could have been a great part of the story that was just left for dust. I feel like overall, like the ratio of messiness to plot in this book was not for me. You know, Hannah was extremely annoying and had no character arc whatsoever. She was a mess at the beginning and she was a mess at the end. And it's just like there's no actual consequences for anybody involved or no real big surprise twist. Like the twist just got completely, it just fell completely flat. So, yeah, those were the two worst books that I read last year, explained in what I believe great detail. And they will be laid to rest now, along with all of the books that I read last year. I'm ready to hop into some new stories, hopefully find my new favorite book this year. Actually, the book that I'm about to start reading is the Most by Jessica Anthony. And if that story stays true to what is written on the back cover, then hopefully it will be good. Please be good. I said I wanted to read more in like the mystery thriller suspense genre this year, and that book falls in line with that. So I'm hoping that's a good one. But yeah, college football national championship games semifinals are about to come on, so I need to watch that. Bye.